Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Dill for what feels like a very significant episode. So how are you, Dill?
Yeah. I'm doing all right. Well, I guess up here in the sunny state of Queensland, the temperature is starting to change.
Sunny.
So I've got a jumper on, which is, indication that it's gone under 25 degrees.
Cheers.
But I'm doing the best that I can with the circumstances surrounding why we're here.
Well, it's been a grey and miserable day down here in Sydney. So at least You've got the weather reasonably on your side, which is nice. Yeah, look, I think it's going to be there's a lot to get through in the sense of I guess sort of more looking forward and implications from the Saturday game. So we will start with the Derby game last weekend, which now does feel like quite a while ago. But then we will look ahead to Portsmouth and I guess beyond, because I think given news overnight and rumours and everything else, there's quite a lot to speculate responsibly on, because I am conscious at the same time you don't want to sort of doom spiral. And I sort of cast my mind back to 2020, and I remember sitting here talking about our upcoming season in League One and thinking, 13th in League One would be a good finish, and as long as we don't get relegated again, and we did come out champions of that season. So I think there is a tendency, as the darker clouds start to loom, that you start to think the world is ending and everything is there's not going to be a city tomorrow, all that sort of thing. But I think there's a lot of things to get through. We will start with the Derby game, which is at least, it's a reality. It's something that we can actually talk about as having happened. And it was more of the same. It was really, I guess, you look at the games last week, you look at the Swansea game and you look at the Preston game and you look at how positive the Preston performance largely was. You look at how disappointing the Swansea performance was, and the Derby performance, unfortunately, was more in the camp of that Swansea game. So how did you see the Derby performance?
I didn't get to watch it because I was out, but like looking at the highlights, it seemed pretty dismal to a point. But I don't know. Looking at the stats, we're better in all of the stats. We've got most of the possession. We got 407 passes to their 252. I don't know. I'm always looking whenever.
No, and look, it's a fair thing to do, and I think it almost highlights the. Oh, I think you've frozen there, but I will. I'll talk until we've got you back. But I think it's almost it almost actually highlights the frustration that. Because I think you're quite right to look at the stats. You look at the passes, you look at the chances created, you look at the way the team has, I guess, performed. And we've seen it consistently over the season where we do create the chances, we do pass it around, we keep possession. And I think I've said to you before, it almost feels like when we have the majority of possession, we actually perform worse, because it's almost putting us in a position of us finding the solution, us finding the final attacking play, rather than when it's a game against, say, Sunderland, where you go, well, they're having the bulk of possession, we're just grabbing a chance on the break. I think Dill's going to rejoin us in a second, hopefully. But until he does, I'll just say, so with the Derby performance, it does sort of emphasize the fact that it's yet another performance where we've had those chances. We've looked, it's like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, and it's a 6 or a 7 out of 10 that we've got all season. It's just not the 8 or the 9 out of 10 that we need to get the result and to get over the line.
And I think, sorry, I cut out there. I don't know if you noticed that I left there. Apologies for that. I think it's a big telling of how this season has gone, that I think even if we were a 6 or 7 out of 10 this whole season, hopefully we could have stayed up. I'm assuming that we will stay up, because we will win this. And if we don't win it, then we'll be League One champions. But I don't know. The last few weeks last few games haven't really inspired that much confidence to where we, sort of want it to be, other than, the last week's win. But I don't know. I don't want to look too far ahead, but I guess you kind of have to, because we got one game left.
And I think that's the craziest part, is that I think, like, personally as well, like I've all along been quite convinced it would stay up, because I thought, we're picking up the points. We're getting the sort of, it's almost like a sequence of a win, draw, loss. So you're picking up the 4 points in 3 games sort of thing, and you're sort of just staying above that dotted line. And granted, I think in an ordinary season, we would be doing enough to stay up. And I think the results have been good enough to an extent. It's just the fact that teams like Luton, Derby, Plymouth to an extent, I mean, they would probably stay up if there was another 3-4 games left in the season, and they're just going to fall short. It's the fact that those teams below us are really just picking up almost top 6 form, which in an ordinary season you wouldn't necessarily see. So
I think Derby was in the last 10 games, they're third on the form table.
Yeah, and that's really what's undoing us, because I think, and I know people hate to hear people say it, and I know people sort of roll their eyes at the sort of the points per game discussion and all that sort of thing. And when, when people say, well, since Sayers came in, we're 12th in the table, and people go, yeah, but in reality, we're 22nd in the table or whatever we are. Like, it doesn't matter what we are since Sayers came in, but it does, to the extent that it shows that it's not the fact that we're really terrible, we're not in relegation form. It's the fact that everyone else is just crazily even better than us.
That's one way to put it. Like, and you're right. Like, it's I thought for some reason, I think, and like you're saying before, we've been talking about coming into the end of the season that we're going to stay up because of we're not terrible. But it just, you would expect that there'd be a few more teams doing even worse, and then everything's sort of turned a page. And the teams that are doing really bad or already had the points. So they're, Preston.
I was just going to say, Preston are the ones who, if we go down, Preston are the ones who would be so relieved that it wasn't even just one more game of the season.
Yeah. So that's, so Preston and that, but just like other teams, like I think like Watford, they've lost 4 in a row. I know Norwich hasn't done too crash hot coming into the end of the season, but so it's an unfortunate reality that we kind of have to face, and I don't know really what to make of it at the moment. But I guess any more thoughts on the Derby game? I didn't get to see it, but what's your take?
Yeah, and I think Paul with a really good comment in the chat, and it's something that I can't really pinpoint in terms of the change in approach especially since the international break, saying everyone else has been playing like they need to win rather than not lose. And I just haven't felt that desperation with City, other than the second half of that Preston game where we went out and won the penalty, and then the crowd got up and there was this surge of momentum, and we won the second penalty and went on. The point is still there that we've only scored the 1 goal from open play since the international break. So even with those 2 penalties against Preston, it doesn't feel as if there's that urgency or desire in the City squad to go out and just throw everything at the wall and leave everything out there. And I think that's, and talking about the Derby game specifically, I just felt like as much at, and I said during the week on social media, it's a really difficult one to judge Sayers on, because I think there's a lot of criticism rightfully for Sayers for how we set up when the subs were made and all that sort of thing. But the fact that Slater went off injured after 10 minutes, the fact that Egan went off injured after 50 minutes, I think, you're then using 2 of your substitutions already there. It's hard then to judge what his intentions were for the game, because he almost has to leave his final subs quite late, because I don't know, if he throws on 2 or 3 players at say 60 minutes and we go a goal up and we've suddenly got like 6 attacking players on the field and we concede, everyone's going, well, what are you doing? Like we should have shored up the lead. Like we've been naive. We've left ourselves open. And so he's clearly seen it and said, well, we're looking okay. And he's right. Like we were the more attacking side. It looked like Derby had no threat. They didn't have a shot for the first 30 or 40 minutes, I don't think, at all. So it's hard to say. It's really easy in hindsight to say, well, they won the game. Obviously, we should have done something. But at the time, it's really hard to say what the right decision was. Now, I know that Burstow was warming up when Jones came on for Egan, and I think it would have been right to throw someone like a Burstow or a Palmer or someone else on in the same substitution, because then you've still got the final window where you could make a couple of changes. And Jones was really poor in the game. Like I'm a massive fan of Jones, and a lot of those guys that came up through League One. Like I'm a big Slater believer, which I know is a reasonably split view in the supporter base these days. But Jones was really poor. Like he he put the challenge in on the Derby player, got the yellow card, and then was really poor marking for the goal itself. There's been a few rumours during the week that a group of players were basically told that they don't have a future at the club during the last international break, and then that's why some of the players' forms have dropped off. You could probably put two and two together. Maybe that's like Jones, and that's why he's not playing as much. Maybe it's a Palmer, and that's why he didn't come on. There's a few players like that, Burstow as well.
Yeah.
But also, it's really hard to know how much is rumor and how much is fact. Paul, again.
And this
sorry?
Oh, if there's headwind of like rumors that then they come from somewhere usually.
Yeah, and Paul there, and it's not even just this season where we're talking about the fact that we only look like going for it when we go behind. Like it was last season as well. Like I was saying to Dan last week, half jokingly but half seriously, that Luton winning was actually going to be good for us because it would mean we'd have to go for it. And even then we didn't go for it. And if Derby had scored in the first 5 minutes, I would have really backed us to get the result. It was just the fact they scored in the 80th where, okay, we throw 3 players on at 87 minutes and you go, that's like way too late to make any sort of impact. So, I mean, look, it means at the same time, it does mean we're going into this Portsmouth game knowing if we win, we're safe. If we draw, maybe we're safe. If we lose, the only concern for me is if we do end up sort of playing for the draw, thinking that could keep us safe, and then it's just a clone of the Derby game where we go behind late on. It's you've got to go out there and get an early goal. I don't know what sort of lineup we would go with. We'll talk Portsmouth in more detail in a little bit, but I guess just as a final comment on the Derby game, it's just look, I don't know. I think Paul's comment's valid, but then I look at that Derby performance against us and I think they didn't. I genuinely don't think that Derby in that game were trying to win. I think they were sitting there going, we'll hold out for a draw if something comes up later. And I think both teams are doing that to an extent. I think both teams are sort of sitting there going, look, if there's an opportunity to score, obviously try and take it, but you set up, first of all, not to lose. And towards the end of the game, Derby went, look, Hull aren't creating much. Let's just, see what we can do. So I think in some instances, like Luton, I think, for instance, are really like just throwing everything at it. And I think that comes from being in the relegation zone and just being like, look, what have we got to lose? But it's tough because I just think compared to our last relegation, this one feels a bit more like, we felt like we were safe the whole way. We've sort of been coasting, thinking we're just doing enough to stay up. And now it's actually, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but I think the fact that we're in the relegation zone now, rather than my bigger worry was not being safe on the final day. If we were just above the relegation zone on the last day, thought we were safe, lose to Portsmouth and slip into the relegation zone, that would be worse because that would be the ultimate complacency. Whereas at least now we know if we don't win, we are probably down. It gives the players that final sort of rude awakening. That's the only sort of positive I can spin for where we find ourselves at the moment.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out, I guess, Sellers' way of, how he wants to manage the team. And it's sort of, I think I'm back at square one with it since when he started, because you started seeing the way that he wanted the team to play a little bit there, and then now it's just like I'm not sure what's going on, and that could be multiple different reasons, kind of like what you were saying. There's rumors about different players, not sticking around, or and it doesn't help with the wages coming in late, like 2 days late. 2 days, 3 days.
2 days, yeah. We'll talk. We can talk more about that as well.
It's not the worst thing in the world. Like I'm sure there's been plenty worse. Did something happen? Like, oh no, it might have been Sheffield Wednesday a while back where all the staff at the stadium weren't getting paid. Or
I think that was last season, yeah. Because
okay.
I mean, look, and we can talk about it more in detail as well, but I mean, I've got really mixed thoughts on the whole story coming out now, in the sense that obviously it's just like, if there's any month where there's a genuine technical error with transfers of cash, it had to be this one, of course.
It had to be this month.
But like you say, I think the fact that I kind of look at it like the players were told it was flagged to the players that the payment was going to be late. They were told they were going to be paid on a certain day. They were paid on that day. To me, it's an amber flag appropriately for the colours. It's an amber flag because if it happens again, then it's a red flag. But like if it happens 2 months, like I think it was Wigan a few years ago where it happened like 2 or 3 months in a row and you're going, yeah, that's a problem. But if it happens as
point deductions for that.
Yeah.
I remember that. 2-3 years?
Yeah. I think it's if it happens multiple months in a row, potentially. I think that triggers a points deduction. For me, it's one of those like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me sort of things where I'm like, look, if it happens once, and there's like a legitimate explanation. A lot of the messaging is that it's, you know, it was just a technical issue and it's all been resolved and they got paid. So it's, you know, okay, whatever. If it happens next month, then it's like, okay, well, no. Like, I think the weekend excuses were like, oh, it's a public holiday and then this and then that. And you're like, well, no, because everyone else has the same issues.
We have public holidays, all the time. Yeah. It's, you have ways around that.
Yeah. But look, I mean, just to wrap up on the Derby game, look, a really difficult game to give any votes for. I gave Kamara the 3 votes just because I thought he looked really promising early in the game. He was probably one of the more attacking players, similar to Gelhardt, who I gave the 2 votes to. I thought he had basically our clearest cut chance in the game, got played through, opted to shoot near post. If he'd gone far post, maybe it's a different story. He gets the shot on target, but didn't. He's really sort of the one that I'd expect if there is someone who's going to pop up on the final day with a goal, it's probably going to be Gelhardt. And then the 1 vote for Hughes. So I think he's copped a bit of criticism because after the game, there was a bit of booing of the players because of the fact that we lost the game. And Hughes was a bit, had his back up a bit about it and sort of going, you know, what are you booing me for sort of thing? And it's like, well, I mean, I understand the fans absolutely have right to boo because we've fallen into the relegation zone. And I understand Hughes' perspective as an individual to say, I've been playing the best I can. But I think Hughes also has to wake up to the fact that, you know, he's a big boy. He's paid the big bucks. He's playing in a team that's underperforming and cop it on the chin, essentially.
How about Hughes? Yeah, he's and he's only 21. Yeah, he's only 21 as well.
So look, and I get that. I get that but he needs to. It's a rude awakening for him, but he needs to understand it. And look, going back to, I was sort of jumping around topics here, but going back to the missed payments, as Paul says, if money motivates the players, Ajun should be offering them a huge win bonus. Whatever it costs us would pale in insignificance to the debt if we're relegated. I like the idea. I saw someone jokingly on Twitter. I like the idea that someone said, oh, Ajun's just a master negotiator. He's sitting there going, boys, I have your wages here. I can withhold them if I want, you know, go out and win on the weekend. It's the ultimate motivation. I think you said similar in the chat this morning, actually, that, you know, just don't pay those wages till they win on the weekend.
Yep. It is funny. Like, when I read that, Paul, I thought to myself, like, I think, don't we already give all the players like really big wages? I think we used to anyways. We probably still do. But hopefully that's what the incentive to win was to be. But yeah, I don't know. It's hopefully he can whip something up. And I was thinking about Ajun a little bit over the past day around, I wonder what he is thinking of this whole situation going into relegation, potentially going into the relegation zone, because he's sort of not put himself out there as like the football mastermind, but like, you know, you would have to have some pretty big confidence to, I guess, going back in the past, obviously firing Liam Rosenior. And so I wonder what his plans are now because of Rosie is gone. And like, you know, we got in Tim, didn't work out. We got in Sellers, which potentially if he was in earlier, there's, you know, a lot of what if isms. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder what he's thinking about the whole situation and what his plans are. Hopefully not to sell. But
yeah, it's a good segue into where to from here, because I think there's a massive sliding doors here now. And I think A lot of people are saying it's our biggest game in years. I think, whether you're looking at the 2016 playoff final against Wednesday, whether you look further back to the Great Escape, whether you look, there's a number of games you could say have been our biggest games in recent years. But I think this one is almost right up there because, as you said before, where there's smoke, there's often fire. And there's a lot of rumors swirling around at the moment about the state of the club financially, whether there's a potential takeover, and all sorts of things like that. Delayed wage payment doesn't help because it sort of speaks to cash flow issues or, shortages of funds. I think I'd sort of try and separate two aspects here because I think a lot of people look at the fact that we have, I think it's something like 80 million pounds of debt to Ajun or his media company, which I think has the debt owed to a third party bank in Turkey or somewhere. There's a difference between us risking falling foul of PSR or financial fair play when you look at the fact that, yes, we've bought a lot of players, we'll have huge losses and that sort of thing. That's one thing where you go, okay, yeah, maybe we'll fall foul of FFP. It's not really the end of the world. Sure, you might cop a points penalty, whatever, you get on with it. The bigger issue would be if we were short of cash and then we go into administration and the club is actually then at risk. And so I think that's sort of where I'd sort of separate the two issues. And if it's an issue of cash, I do sort of look at it a little bit optimistically where I look at, we do actually have quite a good I say good squad as we stare at relegation in the face, but good in the sense that there's a lot of young players. There's a lot of players that if we were to sell them, we would be able to find interested parties and make cash back. And so if we went into League One and we went, shit, we need to raise cash to pay wages, we need to cut the squad, we need to do whatever. I think a lot of the players would find new clubs, and that's sort of the main thing. It's not like, I know I've seen a lot of people compare us to like a Reading or someone where they had like Andy Carroll and Jeff Hendrick, 35-year-olds who don't have a whole lot of sell-on value. And I look at the fact that we've got Kamara, we've got Hughes, we've got Panda, we've got Alzate, all at a good age, Puerta, Zambrano, all at a good age where you could sell them if you need to.
And I'm sure, like if we did go down to League One, the under 21s are killing it. They've been doing really well for the last season. I'm sure some of them would get a call up for 100%. if that would happen.
100%. And I think, and that's actually a really good point because I think there's a lot of concern that, if we had to sell half the squad, 3/4 of the squad, well, who are we replacing them with? And you go, obviously the under 21, you can't just play a team of under 21s in League One and hope for success. But if you had, I don't know, a core of, call it Coyle, Slater, Crooks, Joseph, Burstow, maybe Puerta or someone like that stays around. Call it half a dozen of those sorts of first team players, maybe a bit more, maybe 8 or 9.
We get Balumi back.
Balumi or Miller or someone like that probably sticks around as well. Matazo's out till January, so I don't think he's going anywhere.
Do we have Amrabat on loan?
He's on a 6-month deal, so there's a chance that we could sign him for another year if he was up for a season in League One. Maybe that's a good point. Maybe we get him as well. But you think call it 10 of those players, maybe Panda as well sticks around, or maybe not Panda, but Lojitala or someone. I think filling out the edges of that squad with an Ashby, with a Coyle, Rocco Coyle, that is, with a Tinsdale, all those sorts of guys. Vaughan as well. Vaughan's one who's actually been in the first team and hasn't been playing much. But you think at League One, I think he'd be a decent squad option. So I don't think it's panic stations in the sense of who are we going to find to play for us. It's more as long as we can afford, as long as we can find buyers for some of these players. I don't think it's the end of the world. It's more a case of, does Ajun, like we started this conversation with, does Ajun, what's next for Ajun? Like, what does he think going into next season? What's your take on where you think he's sort of sitting?
It's hard to tell, because I haven't been keeping up with Hull Daily. What is it? Hull Daily Mail, Hull Live. And I sort of thought that the potentially that maybe Ajun was a little bit too involved with that as well, that there may not be as much negative press towards him. which be a very lucrative thing for a TV mogul to do. It would be a very lucrative thing for him to do. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't been able to sort of follow along with with everything that's been said in the last couple of weeks. Anyways, I've just been really busy. But like, I don't know. I think he's stuck around for he's seen what the club can be in terms of a team, especially with where we landed last year. And I think he's seen, and think as fans, we've seen what he can do for the club. And when we're talking about like I think the tickets being really cheap for, or they changed the ticketing system like last season or the season before, maybe 2 seasons ago. I think we got voted potentially best scran in the comp. Which I think that's a big thing. Visually, I think the club's in a good place in terms of, well, from what I can see, from a public perspective, especially I guess international perspective, it seems like it's in a fairly okay place in terms of like operations around what the image of the club looks like. And so I guess the thing that they need to figure out, they being the board and Jun, is figuring out how to sort of replicate that on a squad level. And I don't think it's incredibly like impossible, but I don't know how easy that is to do, in terms of like you take risks, but if you're not in and around football as a whole, those might be unguided risks. And I keep bringing up, firing Rosinia. Like, I still think, we could have done something with that. But then again, we lost a few players here and there. But just a few of the decisions over the years, I think he's probably gotten a rude shock.
Do you think? Do you think if we stay up, I sort of look at it as if we go down, I think his ego would motivate him to get us back to the championship, because I don't think he would want to walk out on the club in a worse position than he bought it. But do you think if we stay up, it's almost certain that he sells, or do you think?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. That's he does strike me as the type, exactly what you said. Like, I think he would be maybe too proud to leave the club when it's in League One. But then again, it's hard with certain business people because it's cut your losses.
Yeah,
it depends how much pride there is. But like, I guess it would be more favorable for him, for the club to go up. But if he wants to stick to his word around having the one family, one dream approach of getting the club to the Premier League, I want to see more people involved that live and breathe football, because I know we had Tan Kessler there for a while, and I can't remember if he had a lot of football experience, or I think a few different people on the board didn't actually have football experience, or we didn't have a head of football. So I would like to see just maybe more media around it as well, like saying we've got the right people at the club for us to succeed that are in the operational level, and director of football, sorry, not head of football. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to say like I want to see him put his money where his mouth is, but like it's hard because we've almost done that since he's came here.
I was going to say he's put a lot of money in, and it's almost
he's put a lot of money in, and like I'm not saying he hasn't done terrible compared to some maybe owners who come in and think that they have the think that they're the best at what they're doing, and then they come in and they just ruin a club. I think he's actually put in the effort to try and make the club better. But at a squad level, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we've got Will Day in the comments saying the longer the time goes on, the dodgier Ajun is looking. Got a friend that's Turkish Cypriot and her family loves him, but he seems to have an equally large hate group. I think the thing I'd say about that is be careful how I phrase this. Turkish people seem very passionate, and it's very tribal when it comes to their football clubs in particular. And I think Ajun is very, very publicly pro Fenerbahce, obviously being part of the board on Fenerbahce now, where I think people who support other Turkish clubs probably will contribute to their dislike of people associated with a Fenerbahce or with a Besiktas or whoever it might be over in Turkey. I think since day one, I've had a healthy skepticism of Ajun in the sense that when he bought the club, I think publicly he was known as having about £100 million worth of personal wealth. And he bought the club for a reported 25 million pounds. And you sort of think on the face of it, that's a very large chunk of his personal wealth going into a project that he is supposedly claiming, well, the money doesn't matter. I'm happy to throw it away, whatever. And you go, well, fair, but where is that money coming from then? Because it's not you're not, selling your Porsche or your, villa in Greece or somewhere to fund the club. And I think it's sort of emerged that it's, largely debt funded, and he's charging the, quite fairly, he's charging the club interest on the debt to then, repay the debt or whatever. But it then raises the question of, okay, well, how sustainable is that? Or how long can he go on funding the club in that manner? And I think, the last year we had the Biscuit Man funding, sponsoring the club for a year. We had McVitie's sponsoring the club for a year. And then that stopped.
Shout out to McVitie's. I've eaten about 6 today.
Yeah, all things like that. And, we had Cynic being bought. We had Shota coming in as manager. We had all these things going on where you go, well, what is his actual end game here? Like, what is he actually, yes, he obviously wants to get, he came in, as all owners do, thinking really easy, throw a bunch of money at it, we'll get to the Premier League, I'll make a whole heap of money back and I'll make a profit. And it'll be, laugh my way to the bank sort of thing. And that hasn't eventuated. And I do, and I don't know, there's just a whole lot of contradictory things, because I look at it and I go, people say, oh, look, the club's run out of money because wages are late, this and that. And you go, well, they're putting on free travel to Portsmouth on the weekend. They can't be doing that if they've run out of money. We've just triggered the clause in Puerta's deal to sign him for £3 million. We wouldn't have done that if we were out of money, because we have to pay Bayer Leverkusen. Like, even if it's installments, we still have to pay Bayer Leverkusen cash at some point. Now, if we were genuinely skint, we would have put Puerta in the reserves. We would have played Harry Vaughan, or we would have played Nathan Tinsdale or someone like that, or we would have, put Palmer up. We would have shuffled the team. There's ways to set that team up without Puerta playing if we were really desperate to not trigger that clause. But we have voluntarily put him in the side, triggered the clause, and signed him. Then you look at the fact that, Ajun still goes to the games. He was at the Derby game on the weekend, for example. So when people say, oh, well, he's lost interest, he's, distancing himself from the club, blah, blah, blah. He went to the game. He's still going. He's still putting money in. And it's a really fair comment from Will saying we're basically back to square one with a load of debt. Look, we were in that position under the Allams as well. And then this is the other side. I go, look, that's all kind of valid and pro-Ajun and whatever. I look at the other side and go, well, actually, under the Allams, we had heaps of headroom for FFP. Like, we were making profits. And I totally get the criticism that people were saying, well, we're not putting that money back in the squad. We're just putting it in the Allams' pockets and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's asset stripping, it's whatever. And you go, that's really bad from a footballing perspective. But from a business perspective, the club was run really sustainably. Like, our wage bill was under 100% of our turnover, which meant that we were actually able to afford the wages. At the moment, I think it's like 150%. So you go, you can't afford that. And you go, okay, so we're actually in a worse position under Ajun because we're at the FFP limits. We've got this debt. If we sell the club to a new owner, what's the new owner getting? It's a club that's, you can't actually put money into because we've made all these losses, So I 100% see both sides of it. And I also just think we've got a game on the weekend. It'll all come out in the wash. We as supporters can't do anything to influence it. We as supporters don't have the full story. There's all these factors that sort of contradict each other seemingly. People saying there's Canadian consortiums. There's people saying that Ajun's going to be here for the long haul. Like, you just, you don't know what to believe. And I think at the end of the day, we need to win on the weekend. We need to stay in the championship. Let's talk Portsmouth and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So who do you have in terms of squad changes? Who's your go-to for this game? Are you sensing that we just need to go balls to the wall, just throw everything at it, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, look, it's a really funny one, right? Because I can see a few different scenarios happening because there's always something about the relegation battle that throws up a surprise on the final day. And I'm like, does that mean maybe we score a really early goal? Or if Bristol City score within, say, the first 10 minutes against Preston, the live table would actually have us safe because we like even just a 0-0 draw with Portsmouth has us safe if Preston lose. Sorry. I am really worried because Sayers came out in his press conference and said we have to win. So that to me says he's going to go out there trying to get a win. But everything that we've seen since international break suggests that we're probably going to set up like Paul was saying, it looks like we're trying not to lose a lot of our games. I really don't know. I don't know. Like, how do we? Like, I'll put it to you. Like, how do you think we should line up as a side looking to win the game? Because I just don't know what changes do you make. Do you put Pedro up top? Do you put Joseph on the wing, for instance?
I don't know. It's because I think we've almost had like this same conversation for the past like month. It's so hard to figure out what's going on, which is sort of why I mentioned earlier. I think I'm more clueless now to what I was at the start.
And I think it's going to be interesting. Like if Slater's out, well, we haven't talked about. So Slater went off injured after 10 minutes against Derby, and like, I totally get all the criticism of Slater as someone that doesn't necessarily make things happen directly or like receive the ball and create chances, all that sort of thing. But he at least, as that sort of core of those League One boys, seems like
holds his line.
He holds his line, and if the chips are down, he's going to give you effort. He's going to give you 100%. And so my worry is when you've got guys like Alzate, Puerta, Crooks potentially, or Palmer as that third midfielder. It's a midfield that can go missing quite easily and kind of, fade in and out of games. I don't know. I don't know how we line up.
I see, like Hughes obviously, and he's one that I think just puts his heart into it. Same with Gelhardt. I've really enjoyed Gelhardt over the past, since we got him. He's had a few lapses of judgment here and there, but like you said earlier, he'd be at the top of my list to score.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, as depressing as to say, I almost feel like our only chance of scoring a goal is a bloody penalty through Gelhardt.
That's easy. We can do that.
Yeah, I think you almost have to go and look. And then Cameron's comment here. I mean, it's really depressing looking at the form from Jones, Slater, and Coyle. I think Coyle started the season really well. And Cameron, like we were talking earlier in the episode, I mean, there's rumors that players have been told to find clubs for next season. You wonder, are these guys some of those players? Maybe that's a contributor to their form dropping off. I sort of think you just have to go with guys that seem to be giving their all. And it's going to be permanent play outside of Gelhardt. I think it's got to be permanent players who actually have something to fight for next season. So it's whether you go Pedro up top, Joseph and Kamara on the wings, Gelhardt at the 10. I guess you're going Alzate and Puerta in midfield, but I'd love to find a way to get Burstow in the starting 11 or at least coming off the bench, because Burstow hasn't had much of a look in, but I feel like whenever he came on against Preston and I actually thought he looked really dangerous and alive to the game. And you need those guys in these sorts of circumstances. You want those young, hungry guys like Joseph. I think as much as he gets slated, I think Joseph is actually a really good player to play in a game like this. Kamara, I think you start. I think it's a tough one because it's against Portsmouth, who he played for last season. So it's like,
true.
How conflicted he is with that. I've seen Portsmouth supporters saying that they'd love us to go down so they can buy him off us, that sort of thing.
They really liked him, didn't they?
Yeah, and he did well. And it's almost like, is it written in the stars that he scores against them, or is it, written that he's going to have an awful performance? So, it's such a tough one because I think no matter how we line up, I think in hindsight we're going to say, oh, like he should have played this person or he should have played that person, and it's like I don't envy CS at all.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. I yeah, I guess we're sort of sitting here guessing about a lineup, but like,
Yeah.
do you have any? Okay, I guess I'll put it to you. Like, do you have any confidence that we'll stay up?
I do.
Like, genuinely.
I mean, I really think that I've got confidence that we can work our ass off and make it happen. Even though the form hasn't been great and there's been a lot of doubts, I think it's like we say, just got to throw everything into it. And I'm sure so many other teams have been in this position as well. We need to send money or good vibes to Bristol.
Yeah.
We need a.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, and it's going to be so interesting mentally what an early Bristol City goal would do, because does it make us more conservative or does it give us more confidence? Like if
an early goal, like you keep talking about an early goal for us, and I think that's the best way forward. And like you're saying, Will, you're right. We don't have a best 11, which is something I guess has made us struggle. I think we've got a good 7. It's just like figuring out that I
who's
swear
the 7?
Jeez, I couldn't tell you. No, but like just possession wise, I think we've been better for the last however many games. We're sitting around 60%. I want to check later on average how much possession we've had, especially with the games that we've lost.
We do have a best 11 that just injured, says Cameron.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what wouldn't give for Miller and Balumi on the wings, Matazo.
I know it's a whole different conversation if we had access to them, and it's such a shit feeling in a way that like if only they just were there, like we wouldn't be having this conversation. And maybe we would, but that would be more of a conversation around, I think we can't blame Sayers for everything. But if we had all those players, I think we could blame Sayers.
Well, and that's the frustration. I think I a couple of weeks ago I was saying to you, like, it's so good that we're going to stay up because it means that we don't have to turn over the squad much. Like, we've got a good squad there. They're just injured, and you think, wow, we've been so lucky to avoid relegation and all that, and now we're facing it down the barrel. Where you just think it's the same as oh, geez. I'm thinking, I guess, the Marco Silva season, which I think was before your time when we were in the Premier League. And you think, if we had just stayed up, we actually had a really good squad forming with like Markovic and Grzycki and Maguire and all those guys playing really well, Robertson as well. And we went down and we basically had to sell basically the whole squad. And you think, geez, if we had just stayed up, like, it's such a sliding doors moment. And it's the same one we're facing now, where you think we've actually got, and I know a lot of people don't think it because of the position we're finding ourselves in, but we do actually have a good squad. And I don't think we've seen the full capabilities from Sayers either in terms of what he can do as a manager, because we're in this desperate position where we're just basically backs up against the wall. I would just love us to get to summer as a championship club, see what we can do, tweak a few things, and, see what we could do next season. So look, it's a really frustrating one.
Yeah, it's sort of what you said. Like it's hard to tell if he is the right man for the club just yet, because again, like I said before, I wouldn't if we went down, I wouldn't blame him in like entirely. And because who knows what we could be with a full preseason without traveling to Turkey and going to all these other places. So.
Well, that's a great stat from Will saying Bristol will win because Preston haven't won away on a Saturday all year. I don't know how you pulled that stat out, Will, but that is a fantastic stat.
I'm backing Cameron on that one, actually.
Yeah, that's why they win. Yeah. And you know what? It's one of those things where we're going to be drawing 0-0 until the last minute. Preston will be losing and we'll be going, we're safe. We're safe. And then Preston will score in the last minute and we'll draw 0-0 as we get relegated. And you just think,
so are the games at the same time?
They're all at the same time. So it's going to be 9:30 on Saturday as well. So a very, easy viewing time for us here in Australia.
My band, I'm playing all weekend, and I start at 9:10 on Saturday, and we'll be finished by 9:30. So I'm gonna be getting the phone out as soon as possible.
I don't actually know It's a really good point, actually. I'm going to look it up because I don't actually know if beIN Sports has announced what games they're showing on the weekend. Because I know I would think, without a shadow of a doubt, that we would be one, but I haven't actually seen. So, okay, maybe not. So they're saying at the moment, as I look at it, that they've got Coventry, Middlesbrough, and West Brom, Luton. So maybe they're not showing. I would have thought us, or at least Derby, Stoke would be one that they would show, but maybe not. So we might be on Tigers Plus, which would make things a bit easier for people who don't have a beIN subscription. Yeah, well, like Cameron's saying, we're on Sky for sure. I would have thought if we're on Sky in the UK, that would be on beIN Sports here, but I guess we'll see a bit closer to the time. Yeah, look, it's a really difficult one. Like I think there's part of me, like I think I'm exactly in Cameron's boat and your boat, where I just go, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. But I'm sort of sitting there now. Like all season, I've been like, we're going to stay up. We're fine. We're going to stay up. We're in the relegation zone now, and I'm like, we're down. Like we're down. Yeah. Prepare for League One. We'll go up as champions. League Ones.
We were so positive.
Yeah. And if we stay up, it's going to be an amazing night. If we stay up, it's going to be one of the more memorable City games in recent years. But I think I'm just sort of preparing for the worst at this stage.
Big. I don't know. It's a big weekend. And a lot to look at.
Yeah, as well as spent the whole week getting myself in the League One mindset. I think I think for everyone's mental health, I think that's the best way to be, because the last thing you'd want is to be getting to full time on Saturday and just absolutely miserable. Which I think, look, regardless, even as much as you prepare yourself, I think everyone's gonna be upset if that does occur. But
at least then we're going into it with a really good squad, and we might be able to enjoy a few more wins.
And look, I think that's it. And like we come back to like talking about the position of the club financially, and I think things will come out in the wash in the coming weeks. But I just keep coming back to the fact that you look at the accounts as things stand, which is up to the end of last season. You look at all of the evidence, the actual facts as they stand, the free travel, triggering Puertas clause, various things like that, where you just go, the money that we spent in January, things like that, where you go, we might get to a point where Jun goes, fuck it, I've lost interest in the club. I'm gonna stop, spending huge money on transfers. And you go, look, maybe that's how we get to. But in terms of actually being in like a Berry situation, as I think someone in the comments was saying earlier, I just don't see us there yet. And I could be wrong. I could hold my hands up next season and say, geez, who knew that we were in such a deep hole financially as this. But I think at the moment, and I think Jun genuinely not even deep down, I think he is a good person. Like I think everything that he's done so far shows that he is a good person. He does have people's best interest at heart. Like if he wasn't, he wouldn't be charging, 14 quid a month for season passes. He'd be charging 30 quid a month, I think he's genuinely a good person. He's very rash. I think he's very impulsive. Absolutely. But I think if it came to it and he was like, geez, I can't afford the club anymore, it's going into a black hole, I think he would find a buyer for us. And I think, and actually I meant to say earlier, you made a really, really great point that under Rajun versus under the Allams, I think we're actually viewed really well as a club. Like you look at the fact that the Lat, Villagine, Greaves, all in the Premier League. Carvalho did really well here. From a playing perspective, I think, you joke about it, but like the fact that our food is like well recognized, the stadium, all of that, like there's a huge array of, the owner taking us on holidays to Turkey. People laugh at that. But I think if someone who didn't know much about football was like, I want to buy a club in the Championship who I could, invest in a bit and get them up to the Premier League. Well, this club's, produced all these players who've gone on to play in the Premier League. They must have really good academy pathways, and they must, develop players really well. I'll go buy them.
Things like socials as well. Our socials look good, and I've always been up to date really well. I'm like from a business perspective, that's a good thing. Like it's all the little things matter. So and that's sort of what I was trying to get to before, where like he's crossed all the T's, it's just dotting the I's with the squad. And that's why I'd like to see and you said like he's really impulsive, which he is, and like I think it's been a bit of a detriment here and there. But I'd like to see him hopefully realize that like, okay, I need some better people within the organization to sort that out.
And I think I worry a bit because I think Twitter, social media in general is a really impulsive place, and I think a lot of people are really worried coming into the weekend. People seeing the wages late, all of that starting to turn on him really quickly. And I imagine for him as a person, he's someone who really likes to be liked. And I think for him, seeing all of that negativity will have a really damaging impact on him. And I think, look, Arjun, watch this podcast if you want, a bit of an uplift. Like
We're fans.
We're fans. And I think there's a balance to be had where you can say, look, as you say perfectly, like there's been mistakes made, but there's also been a whole lot of positives. And you look at the stadium, like 21,000 or something on average for the season is a fantastic effort. And that's all down to Arjun. I think there's still a way for him to be a really great owner and have a really strong lasting legacy. And I don't think it needs him to, shell out millions and millions of pounds. I think it's getting the right people into the club.
Yep.
If it's a relegation, so be it. And it's about getting us back up and having a really strong, stable platform. And if we stay up, it's about saying, okay, learn from those mistakes, listen to Sayers, listen to what sort of players we need to, to really improve. And you know what? If next season is an 11th place finish, you take it. You don't sack Sayers. You say, okay, that's an improvement. And then you build from there, and you go and you build and you build. And I think that's sort of the approach I think we need to take.
I think it's I think the stability and Cameron, you mentioned through my few seasons of support, I've seen relegation, winning a league, mid-table, just missing out on playoffs, relegation battles. I've that's probably around the same.
Never dull and hull
that I've followed, and so it's been.
I said that. I didn't actually see Will had said that exact comment, but there you go. Never dull and hull.
Yeah. Exactly. It's been really exciting, regardless. A little bit less exciting maybe this season.
I tell you what, Saturday is going to be exciting.
It's going to be very exciting. So
for the wrong reasons, but
we'll see.
Yeah. Look, it's been a long episode. I shouldn't keep you too. I've been absolutely rambling as well. So thank you for putting up with it. But I guess there's only one thing to close on is score prediction for this one. What are you thinking?
I feel like I need to put some more confidence and juju into it that I used to. So let's go 3-0.
Oh, I like it.
Hull win and win good.
Look, I think for our official Facebook tipping, I'm going to be saying 1-0 Portsmouth because I'm coming for you, Mitchell Wiley. I'm coming for you. And I think he's going to back City for a win in it. And I did say to him, if I beat him, that he owes me a beer at Cheers when the new season starts. So we'll see how that goes. But I think for this, I think you're right. Like, I think I'm going to say 3-1 City. I think we'll score early, and I think the players will really get their backs up or their confidence up with the early goal. I think the one thing I'll say is I think the away bays for City are going to be loud. They're going to be boisterous. They're going to be really behind the side. And I really hope we can get an early goal and Bristol can get an early goal and everything just sits there in our favor and we can really, enjoy the day and make it a really momentous day in our history, because I think ultimately one way or another, it's going to be momentous and hopefully it's a really positive outcome. So
let's make some history.
Yeah, let's make some history. So look, it's going to be a big one. Look, we'll be back next week to recap the game one way or another, give our votes, all that sort of thing. I don't want to go too early on this. I think at this stage we're looking at doing a review episode with the lads from To Hull and Back. We'll see how that goes. It might depend on the result. Might depend how up for doing a review people are. But one way or another, we'll definitely do a review ourselves, and we'll see how that all pans out in the wash. But look, it's been awesome. Like, we've had, I think, something like 10 or 12 different people coming through the chat and the views for this episode. It's obviously a really significant one, big period of time for the club as well. So we do appreciate all the views, all the comments. It's always awesome having people in the chat because it makes it, all the more enjoyable interacting with you guys as we go.
Thank you.
And a massive thank you as well, Dill, as I said, putting up with my rambling as we've chatted.
No, it's fine. It's it's needed, I think, with like the state of the team at the moment. I think we'll get there. But no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And look, I guess there's only one thing left to say is thank you all for watching along. And for Saturday, come on, City.